Welcome to the next lesson in our course, Basic Beginners FreeCAD for FreeCAD version 1. In our previous lesson, we used tools from both the Sketcher and Part Design workbenches to create our first model, a simple drilled shim. We practiced drawing geometry, applying constraints, and turning sketches into 3D solids, using operations such as the pad. In this revised and updated lesson, we'll build on those skills to model a circular locking flange. This design is more complex, so we'll introduce a few new tools such as the pocket, construction geometry, and external geometry. Before modeling, it's important to interpret the design from different angles. If I had this object in my hands, I'll examine it from the top, front, and side views, examining those profiles. From the top, the shape is the most complex. It includes an outer ring, inner openings, and evenly spaced holes. From the front or side views, this form is much simpler, almost like two stacked rectangles if you ignore the curved corners. If you can't imagine a subject in less detail, then one trick is to look at the subject and squint your eyes. Blurring out these features and helps us to focus on the core structure. We end up with stacked sections that can be created as layers of extrusions. This blocky first, details later approach is common in CAD. It lets us define the main volume before adding refinements. The model essentially consists of three features: a base plate, a raised ring, and finally a shallow recess, situated underneath, cut using a pocket operation. But there is an alternative workflow. That's ignore the holes and imagine a cross-section through the subject. This shows that they're circular. Looking at the subject from the side view, examining those side profiles, we can see they're all the same. This points to a revolve. By rotating a 2D profile around an axis, we can use a single profile. For this lesson, we'll think in terms of layers rather than using the revolve. This will allow us to cover the pad and pocket operations. Now we understand the theory, we can look at tackling a subject in FreeCAD. If you like what you see and you want to donate to the channel, then you can do so via Ko-Fi or Coffee at ko-fi.com/MANG0 or via PayPal at paypal.com/paypalme/DarrenBEstone. I also run a Patreon where you can get early access and additional content, and that's at patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Links can be found in the channel header, on the About page, or in the descriptions of these videos. So to start our project, I'm in FreeCAD. We'll create a new document. We'll use the drop-down selector and select the Part Design workbench. You can close the Start tab down the bottom if you want to. And I'm going to come over to the Model tab. And we'll create a new body to contain everything, and then a new sketch. We're going to create the most complex profile, and that's looking from above. Remember, we can model this in a number of different ways. We're taking the layered approach. Let's click on the XY plane. So we're looking down on the object. I'm going to use the circle tool. Now there's many circle tools. I'm using the Create Circle by Center Point, and I must make sure that both the Auto Constraints and the Auto Remove Redundance is checked. So let's add our circle. If we hover over the center point, we get the coincident constraint by the side of the mouse pointer. We left click once, and then we can move our mouse out to a distance. We can enter the distance, or if I accidentally drop it, then we can right click and use the dimensioning tool, select that, and hover over the circle and add a diameter. Now notice our scaling down the bottom, 150 by 100. This circle is going to be 100 millimeters. I'm going to type that in and hit enter. And you notice how it fits the 3D view. If I did this and zoomed in, say here, then it wouldn't be obvious that I've added the circle. If you are in this situation, then we can use the fit tool. That centers our sketch and fits it to the 3D view. Let's right click to cancel. I want to make some holes in here. I'm going to use the circle to create these holes, and I want to position these accurately around 4 locations. I'm going to use the axes. So we hover over one, we get a point on object constraint. Click once, bring this out, and drop a circle. If I accidentally missed, let's say on the horizontal axis, I was down here and added a circle, I can add the constraint separately to this, and we'll do that in a moment. And I'm going to miss all of these and show you how to do that. So my circles are in, that's right click to cancel, and I'm going to take this point and the vertical axis and use the coincident constraint. We get a point on object constraint. This is a combined tool, coincident and point on object constraint. And make sure nothing's selected, and this time I'm going to select both the center points of the circle and then the horizontal axis, and then apply that constraint to both those circles on that line. So now I've got all these circles in place. I want to add some diameter. To do that, we select them all. We don't have to hold down Control. This adds them to the Hungary selection, as said before in the previous video. If I select it again, it removes it from the Hungary selection. If I drop down the dimensioning tool, I can see constrained diameter in here. If I use that, the constraint will be added to one of the circles, and an equality constraint is added across all of the others. Let's set that to 15 millimeters and hit OK. These circles are mobile at the moment, and you can see we've still got 4 degrees of freedom. If I click on the 4 degrees of freedom, it shows all these circles need locking down. To do that, I could place a distance between, say, all of them and the center point, but there's no need to. We're going to use construction geometry. To use construction geometry, we add another circle or some other geometry. I'm using a circle. Hover over the center point, coincident to that, and come out. Now from here, I can hover over another point, this one, to make it point on object constraint, but I want to be coincident to this circle, so I'm just going to drop it here. Let's right click to cancel. This circle is just going to be scaffolding. So make sure nothing's selected. I'm going to take each of these points of the circle, which are currently point on object constraint to these axes, and then select the circle, and then use a point on object constraint. You can do them one by one if you wanted to. These are now attached both to the axes and the circle. So just by dimensioning this circle here, using the dimension tool, and setting it to 60 millimeters, I've locked down all of these circles in here. Let's right click to cancel, and I now have to change this circle to construction geometry. If you don't, what happens if I close? You see this circle here. So when we try to pad this, this is going to interfere with our model. We don't want that. Let's double click the sketch. To change this circle, let's select the circle. See it selected in the elements. And then we'll use this tool here, the toggle construction geometry. Also available from right click, toggle construction geometry. It now becomes a dotted edge. And if I close this now, you can see it's disappeared. Let's come back into the sketch. It's worth noting that all the geometry by default are in white. So the standard geometry. If we select the icon to toggle construction geometry without selecting anything first, they will be in blue. You can see this is swapped. This means that if we create geometry now, such as this circle, it gets created as construction geometry. I'm going to right click, take that and hit delete on the keyboard and toggle this back. I now want to place a circle at this point, our last hole. These diameters may be in the way, and if I click on them, we can see them in the left hand side here in the tree view. So I can click the tick by the side of them and hide them if I want. And that just gets them out of the way. But we can still get to the point if I check them. And we'll create a circle, hover over the center point. We want the coincident constraint, click once and bring this out and set this to 20 millimeters. We're fully constrained. We can close that now. We can select the sketch and pad it by 5 millimeters and hit OK. We've created our first feature. Remember to save as you go. I'm now going to create the next layer, the tube that sits on top. For this, we need to select the face. This is the plane that the sketch is going to be attached to. Now, word of warning, if we select this again, watch the tree view. You see on the second click it hasn't changed. We've actually selected the whole pad. I'm going to click off, so nothing's selected. We select the face, we click again, select the pad. If we click once more, our selection moves up to the body. Now this is a common mistake in FreeCAD when you're very first starting. You think you selected the face, but when we create a new sketch, we end up with the planes visible. And if we rotate around, you can see the XY plane is sitting on the bottom of the object. We're not attaching to the plane of the face. So let's cancel that and then select the face. This time, I'll select new sketch. We've applied it to the face of the object. I'm just going to select my view sketch or select the top. So now we're on the correct plane and I want to make the tube. For that, I'm going to use a circle again. Hover over the center point, coincidence the center point, click once and bring this out to about here. For the inside, we're doing the same. We have two circles. We're going to learn about the import geometry tool. This internal circle needs to be the same diameter as this one in here. Now we could apply the same diameter to this circle, but we can import geometry from the previous feature. Let's right click to cancel the tool and use this tool here to create external geometry, or right click and create external geometry. Once we selected that, you'll notice that when hovering over the feature, we get the edges and faces highlighted. This is the pre-selection. If I hover over this internal edge, we see it's highlighted. If I click once, it imports that geometry in, and we can see it in purple on the left-hand side here. This is external geometry. Let's right-click to cancel the tool. This geometry won't appear if we close the sketch, but what we can do with it is now select it and say select the circle and make those equal. This saves us adding a datum constraint and will also mean that if the underlying feature changes, so will the geometry in the sketch. So now let's select the circle and add a diameter using a dimensioning constraint. And if you don't get the diameter, just press M on the keyboard and that will cycle through the different constraints of that circle. We've got radius and diameter there. Drop that constraint and set it to 35 millimeters and hit OK. We've now created that geometry that we need. Hit close and then we can select the sketch and use the pad operation and set the length to 15 millimeters. I click off, our preview updates. What's happened is we've added volume to this sketch, and because we're using part design workflow, this volume is automatically fused to the other one. Let's hit OK. On the left hand side we can see the history. So we have our last operation with the tip, the little arrow pointing downwards, and then the previous operation, which I can click on and show, will automatically hide the previous operation, and we can go back in time, look at the operations that have been applied to the object to create the individual features. Just going to show the tip. Next, we have to look at the bottom of the object to create our next feature. And I'm going to select the bottom face. Now the whole lot is highlighted in green. That's because I haven't clicked off, and we'll select the bottom face. It may not look like it's selected. This is because of the lighting that can be changed in the settings. So we may want to add a slight angle to see what face has been selected. And now I can create another sketch which can be applied to the bottom. We'll use a subtractive feature to remove volume. And it's exactly the same for creating sketches for additive volume. So we just click on the circle, hover over the center point, and bring this circle out. Dropping it, right clicking, and then using the dimensioning tool. Select the circle, drop the dimension, and set it to 90mm, and hit enter. This is all that's needed. We just need to close. We can see the circle sitting on that face. Select the sketch. It's already been selected for us anyway. Then we're going to use this one here, the pocket. If we click the pocket, you notice that most of the object has been removed, and this is because of the length. And if we reduce the length down, the volume starts to come back. We want to set this to 2mm and hit OK. We've got the basis of our shape now, and we just need to add the finishings. So our model is almost complete. We're just going to add some finishings in the form of a fillet. The fillet operation can be found on the toolbar here. Also available from Part Design, apply a dress up and fillet. There's two ways of using the tool. We can select multiple edges by clicking on one and holding down the Control key and selecting others. Or we can select the tool first and then start selecting edges. You may see an error message, and this is just because we haven't selected anything yet. To use the tool, we look to the left and you see that we have this button here saying Preview. If I click this button, it's saying Select. So at the moment we're in select mode, and to add fillets, we just select the edges so they're coloured in pink. And we work our way through, selecting the edges that we want. If we want to remove an edge, I don't want this bottom edge here, we just select it. You don't have to hold down the Control key. We can also remove edges from the panel on the left. Just select one. If I right click, we can see we've got Remove, which is also the Delete key. When we've added the edges, we can select the Preview to see what it looks like. Now, one thing with this, I'm going to go back into Preview mode. If I change the radius, we can see we get a preview. If this radius grows so it's larger than the edge that it crosses, you can see it's 5mm here, then the fillet will fail. You can see no fillets added. If I hit OK, it comes up an error. If I back this off from the 5 to the 4, we can see that the fillet is 1mm away from the base. If I wanted to take up all of this edge, I need to use 4.99. And that takes up all of the edge. If the fillet occupies the whole depth of an edge, so this here is 5mm, then it'll go into error. We have to back it off slightly. Let's set this one to 2mm. We click off, it's applied, and then I hit OK. We've almost completed our model, but we see some artifacts running around the side. This will export fine. It's just due to the deviation settings. To change this, if I click on the body and come down to the two tabs down the bottom, Data and View, we click on View and look down and find deviation. At the moment, this is set to 0.5. If I set this to 0.05 and click off, notice the edge has been cleaned up. Now, word of warning with this setting, it takes more CPU cycles for a lower deviation. So if you're working on complex models, this is the kind of thing that you'll do last of all. And it's more for presentation than for export. I'm going to press the Home key just to recenter my view, and we have the finished model. At the beginning of this lesson, we mentioned that there was an alternative and more efficient workflow to create this model using just one profile, and that's by using the revolve operation. In our next lesson, we'll explore this subject in more detail and follow up with another exercise. Hope you enjoyed that lesson, and I look forward to seeing you in the new one. If you like what you've seen and you want to donate to the channel, then you can do so via Ko-Fi or Ko-Fi at ko-fi.com/MANG0 or via PayPal at paypal.com/paypalme/DarrenBEstone. I also run a Patreon where you can get early access and additional content, and that's at patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Links can be found in the channel header, on the About page, or in the descriptions of these videos. I thank everybody that's donated so far. It really helps to keep the lights on, so I can produce more content and also expand the channel. Thank you for liking, commenting and subscribing to these videos, and I hope to see you again in the next one.